No problem, no problem.
Maybe we'll be the guest.
Yeah. Hi guys, welcome to EB Education Consult. As we've been talking about the whole of this week, today we have Engineer Emmanuel Dela Amegbe joining from Saskatchewan, Canada, and Dr. Grace Opare. She's also joining from Canada, and they're going to share their experiences with us, as well as give us some pro tips on opportunities regarding funding and scholarships. And probably for some of them, they have experience working or moving and living in Canada. They may give us some insight on that. So I will go to Emmanuel and he will tell us more about himself in the form of introduction. And after him, Dr. Grace Opari will also introduce herself before we zoom into the subject matter. Emmanuel, please.
Hey guys, so my name is Emmanuel Dela.
A bit. Can you increase your volume?
Is it good enough?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So my name is Emmanuel Dela Amegbe. And Enoch calls me engineer because that's a title I got from graduating in the master's program from Czech Republic. So in Czech Republic, if you attain a master's degree, there's a title that you get automatically, engineer. And so that's why he calls me engineer. But then, so yeah, my name is Emmanuel Dela Amegbe. You could call me Engineer Emmanuel. You could call me whatever.
I got several questions about which kind of engineer, and I told them, man, that is equivalent of MSc in Czech, but in Czech market they use it. So I'm going to even remove it to avoid any controversy.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I have a master's degree. I actually have my first bachelor's degree from Ghana. It was in agribusiness management from KNUST. And then I moved to Czech Republic for 3 years where I did a master's program in international development and agricultural economics. I graduated in 2023 and then moved on to Canada last year to pursue a master's program in public administration. So currently I'm still in the public administration program, like to completing next year. And yeah, as we go on, I think I would try to inculcate some of my experiences in the tips I'll be sharing, and so from there you'll know a bit more about me. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you about telling us about yourself, and now we will go to Dr. Opari. You are muted, please. You are muted. Yeah. No.
Okay, is that fine?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. So hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. My name is Grace Opare. So I went to school. I went to University of Cape Coast with Enoch. That's where I got to meet Enoch. Yeah, we're all in the same fellowship, 7-day Adventist, NAS UCC. From UCC, I did bachelor's in African Studies. So from there, I went. Please pardon me. I still have my daughter here who is. Yeah, so pardon me for her little bubbles. So from UCC, I went to Legon to pursue a master's in Master of Philosophy in African Studies, and then I went on to do my PhD in African Studies, and I was consistent with African Studies because right from UCC, I had the dream of becoming a lecturer, and from speaking with people who were already in the field, I got to know that staying in the same field and specializing in a particular area contributed a lot to your success in academia. So I was very intentional with that. place. Sorry.
No problem.
Then right after my PhD, I did a little bit of work before coming to Canada with my family. So yeah, I'm currently staying here in Canada with my family as a wife and a mother. I've helped people. I've helped people secure admissions to Canada for study purposes, and that is where my experience in studying abroad comes from. So I'm very happy to share my experience with everybody out there. So this is just a little brief introduction about myself.
Thank you so much for your time. I can see you are a busy person. However, you chose to still out of your busy schedule, make time to enlighten our audience on this subject area. So thank you for your time and the introduction. Now I will go straight into the topic for consideration this evening, and I'm going to start with Emmanuel. For now, what I want you to tell us is, from your introduction, you mentioned that you studied at Ken UST. From Ken UST, you came to Czech Republic to pursue masters in something agriculture economics, and then afterwards you moved to Canada. How did you find the opportunity in Canada, in terms of the study program, the application processes, and then later we will come to the visa application and all that. Can you share with us?
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
By the way, before you go on, someone is saying that Grace looks familiar. That is from Mohammed Ibrahim Gariba. Has she ever attended Federation for Humanities and Social Science Congress in Canada? No. Okay, cool.
No, but
Yeah, please go
I've
ahead.
attended a few international conferences. I think
Mhm.
I attended one in Switzerland, and I think I also had conferences in the UK. So probably we might have met somewhere.
Okay, cool. That's fine. Yeah, Ima, please.
Yeah, so maybe, yeah, I mean, for different people, they have different ways they look for the opportunities and all
A bit
that.
louder.
Wow. Is it better? Is it
Yeah.
better? Okay. So for different people, they have different ways of looking for opportunities. In my case, I try to, as much as possible, position myself in such a way that I would have a better opportunity, a better chance of getting anything I pursue. So just as you already mentioned, from KNST I did agribusiness. From agribusiness, I had wanted to move to Canada. I actually tried 2 times by myself. It didn't work out. And then I employed a connection man the third time, and it still didn't work out. Right. So I was pretty frustrated with the whole process, thinking it was
Can you speak a bit louder?
I'm doing
It's
that.
about your voice, not the PC. It's about your voice.
Okay, I'll try. Okay. So did you get what I said so far?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So I was pretty much frustrated with the whole Canadian process because I I I got to the point where I felt like it was impossible for anybody to get in. Meanwhile, I saw a lot of my friends going in. I felt like maybe it's because they have the money to pay some people off or something. And then a colleague actually introduced me to Czech Republic. Honestly, I didn't like it so much in the beginning, but then I was like, yeah, why not? I could give it a shot. And then I did. And God being so good, it was actually successful. I moved into Czech Republic and I realized it was actually pretty easier to actually complete your master's degree or whatever school you bring to Czech Republic as compared to how it would have been for me in Canada if I had moved to Canada right from Ghana, right? And so I come to Czech Republic, I do 3 years. I spent 3 years in the country, but then 2 of the years I'm doing my master's program in international development and agricultural economics. And then I actually find a job, a great job actually, even whilst I was in school. And then the job keeps me even after school. And then I spend like a whole other year with a job that is DHL, by the way, DHL ITS. I work with DHL and all that. And then I'm like, okay, now I need to go back to my first love because originally it's always been Canada I wanted to come to. And so I read a lot about Canada because, in fact, I already knew a lot about Canada and its application processes. But then, because I had been denied 3 times, now I wanted to be in a better position to actually do the application myself and do it just one time. And so I read a lot on the news. I looked into a lot of schools, to be honest. Like the Canadian process is not a matter of you look at one school and you think this is it. If I don't get this, I'm not doing it again. There are a lot of options. There's like so many schools in Canada, you cannot even count them. So I look into all the schools and then I finally decide to pick University of Saskatchewan. That was the only application I did actually, because after my research, after considering a lot of factors, it was the best option for me.
What are some of the factors you considered in this case?
Okay, so especially considering the year we had last year and the years ahead of us and how the federal government and the provincial governments are changing things around, right? I would strongly recommend that anybody who wants to move into Canada actually look into the provinces that has lesser number of residents or the provinces that are not very popular. So, for example, I'll just take you back a little bit. In 2023 and the years before, right? Each year, the number of international students coming into Canada increased a little bit. In
Okay.
2023, there was 1 million international students who got visas approved to come into Canada. 1 million. And
Wow.
then in 2024, for a country that has a population of about 30 something million, I'm not too sure about that anymore. So, and then in 2024, the government is like, no, this year we want to put a cap on the number of international students entering the country. And so it limits the number of students coming into the country to just over 400,000 students. So last year, 1 million people were coming into Canada. Sorry, 2023, 1 million people were coming into Canada. In 2024, the government is
40% of that. Okay.
exactly. That tells you how difficult it would get for a lot of people to come into the country. In 2025 and 2026, the government is maintaining the same position, have less people come into the country because now there's a lot of pressure on healthcare, there's a lot of pressure on housing, there's a lot of demonstration going on about people not finding Canada as good as they thought it would be. So back to your question. For me, what I was considering a lot was about which province in Canada would give me a better chance of securing my study permit. Because the point is that if it doesn't matter which province in Canada you are in, as long as you have the study permit and you work your way through the whole process, you could end up in Ontario or Toronto if that's where you want to finally live.
Okay.
And so I looked at a province. So yeah, again, just back to the numbers. For this 400 and over 400,000 students that the government want to come into Canada from 2024, 2025 and moving on, the government actually also went ahead to distribute the numbers. And then in distributing the numbers, you realize that even though there's a cap that's preventing a lot of students to come into Canada, the this cap wouldn't affect all provinces equally, right? So, for example, in Ontario, the number of students who usually went to study in Ontario now would drastically reduce because each year there was a lot of people going into Ontario and not into the other provinces as much. But then if you come to another province like Saskatchewan, for example, where I am now, even though the government has introduced this new 40% cap on the number of students coming in, it doesn't affect the province so much because, for example, in I think last year there were about a little over 14,000 international students coming into the province to study. But then, even with the introduction of the cap, right, restriction, and with the federal government allocating a specific number of students for the province to accept, you realize that doesn't affect Saskatchewan so much because now the government allocated 17,000 international students for Saskatchewan for 2025, for example. So the thing is that even though the general number of international students are now reduced, it wouldn't affect places like Saskatchewan so much because they already taking 14,000 students last year, 2 years ago, and all that. And now the cap that has been allocated to them is like 17,000. So technically, it doesn't really, okay, on mute, sorry.
So basically, even though for the whole country it's capped, but certain province, even they have, considering that they had 14,000, is it
Yes,
14,000?
last
And
year.
now 17,000, it means their
They
limit
still
has
have
even
a lot
increased.
of, exactly. So yeah, I mean, look, for example, if I was last year, I was thinking about all these small things, and I was like, okay, yeah. So maybe what I mean, why do I have to go to Ontario? I have a lot of friends there, of course, but then Saskatchewan too looks like a very good place, and so I did apply to Saskatchewan. I got admissions. I got admission into the school, and then I applied for the visa. Actually, I applied for the visa for myself and my wife, and we
We'll
both.
come to that part. We'll come to that part. But
Okay.
just before I come to Dr. Grace Opari, let me ask you, where did you look up for this information that you refer to decide which territories are giving more opportunities to bring more students and which territories are not? Maybe our listeners will need this information to
I
consider.
can I can actually share the link with you, but then you can always look at IRCC website. They have a lot of news coming up about new rules and regulations because for especially the latter part of last year saw a lot of changes from IRCC. Almost every week
Mhm.
there was something else coming about study permits for international students and all that. So you can look at IRCC. It's like the best place to find the information. But then with a specific cap for the specific provinces, each province has its own platform if
Of
you like.
this
So
information.
you can find these informations there. I can share the one for Saskatchewan, and yeah, if anybody wants to
You
take.
can share it in the private chat, and then I would put it in the comment section if you don't mind. Yeah. Thank you. As we wait for him to do that, let's come to Grace. So, can you tell us your journey so far? I know that you were not a student per se, but like you earlier on indicated, you've helped students apply to come and study and stuff. Um, uh, how was your journey for yourself moving, and then how did you come to advocate for study in Canada and finding these opportunities for other students?
Okay, so thank you very much. Whilst I was doing my master's and my PhD, especially in Ghana, I came to the realization that most of the times when we go to school, we just concentrate on our courses, pass, get our grades, and then we move. But there was a time I met this lecturer, Dr. Kwanzaa, whilst I was doing my PhD. And then he said to me that do not just pass through the
The
school,
university.
let the university also pass through you. And then my husband, when I started my PhD, my husband was like, I know you're going to spend like 4 or 5 years doing your PhD. You don't
PhD.
just go through the school. I want you to explore the opportunities that come with the school. So I was like, okay, so what are the opportunities that come with going to school? So it was at that point that I began looking at travel. I had already traveled before when I was in UCC, but it was quite a long time ago. So at this point, my husband was like, it's about time you explore the travel opportunities that come with being a student. And then I also tried working alongside whilst being a student. So I was a graduate assistant at the University of Ghana. So whilst I was doing my graduate assistantship, I worked with lecturers, professors, and it was at that point that I got to know about African Studies associations. So there were lots of associations in the US, in Europe, in the UK, in Canada. So we have the Canadian Association of African Studies, so many associations, and all these associations had conferences that they put up papers for every year. So it was at that point that we took the decision that we're going to explore that aspect of academia. So most of my travels were
Through
academic.
conferences.
Yes, through conferences. And then once I'm able to secure a visa, I'm able to also use it to explore visiting family and friends. So I want to say to everybody out there, if you are still doing your
Studies.
master's and you are in school, or if you are doing your PhD in school, do not just go to class, do your courses and leave. There are so many opportunities for students out there, especially if you are someone who is aspiring to travel. And the good thing is that when you are a student and you are applying for a visa, you do not need, especially if it's for a visitor's visa, you do not need so much documentations. Most of them will have to come from your school. And once you have the good grades to show that you are a good student, when you go, you are really going to come back. It just opens doors for you. There was a point in time, I think a colleague of mine sent a link to me. It was a conference in Switzerland. And I was like, okay, are we going to apply for this? And he was like, oh, he's not sure. I was like, oh, but you just sent it to me. Why aren't you doing it? So I went ahead and I applied. I submitted an abstract. So long story short, my paper got accepted. And you don't need any published work to attend the conference. Once you are in school, you are writing 10 papers, you are writing end of semester papers. You can just, I mean, twist those papers to suit the topics or the
Conference.
goals, the objectives of the conferences. So that was what I did with my the Switzerland conference. I actually twisted my PhD thesis topic, just an aspect of it to suit them. So I got my paper got accepted, and then I got an email from them that with a PhD student from Sub-Saharan Africa, I
Who
qualified for.
sponsor you?
I wasn't expecting that. So I was like, oh, that is great. And they got the sponsorship for me, gave me the sponsorship letter. And then I used that for my application to Switzerland. At the point, I was like, Switzerland is a very difficult place to get a visa to.
I
But
agree.
getting all the documentation from the conference organizers, and it was hosted by University of Basel, and then the funding and all that. And the funding was able to cover the funding was able to cover my flights, like everything was just taken care of. So it is important that you explore those options whilst you are still in school. Then I think whilst I was about submitting my PhD, there was this friend of mine who wanted to travel abroad to do her studies. And then she had gone to see someone who charged her hugely. And then
Tell us how much was she charged?
I think she was being charged like 10,000 US dollars or something like that. And then she was complaining. I had not explored the option of applying to a school abroad, but I always felt like if you've been able to go to school, finish your first degree, probably done a master's or haven't even done a master, you should be able to do
Apply
it
for
by
it, yeah.
yourself. So I was like, okay, I mean, you are complaining, you are not ready to do it. So I told her, okay, why don't we try it? I'm going to do it for you. If I get it through, you are going to pay me half
Of
of
that
what
money.
the person is charging you. That's like, oh, yeah, my friends, like, oh, don't worry, I can assist you. So it was at that point that I decided to sit down to explore what how to go about the entire
Process.
application process. So I taught myself. So I went online, I took time, and then I began to explore. So I asked her, what course do you want to study? So she told me the name of the school. So I just went online, I went to Google, and then I used the course she wanted to study in the search engine. So let's say African studies. So like African studies in Canada.
In Canada.
And then the schools will pop up. You have a lot of schools. You take your time to go through every school one by one. You go through the website. Immediately you get to the website, what you need to look out for is the eligibility criteria. You need to be sure that the school you are putting the application in, you qualify. Because it is you are going to pay for the application. So it is not you don't need to waste your money if you know you're not going to qualify. So if the school, for instance, says they accept a GPA of 3.0 and above, and then you have a 2.9, you know that disqualifies you. So you don't waste your time applying to that school. So that was how I began the application process. So I looked at the eligibility criteria, and then I was just taking which schools that she qualified for. After that, I looked at I also searched for the enrollment percentages. Which of these schools accept more students than the others? I realized some schools had more acceptance rates than the others. So those with the less acceptance rates, I cut them out. So that was how I was fishing them out little by little. And then somewhere along the line, I felt like some of the schools had big names. University of Toronto, McGill University. I was like, since these schools are big schools, it means that it's going to be highly competitive applying to these schools. However, there were also schools in smaller communities, and they are all universities in Canada. And whether you are going to live in Toronto or you are going to live in it is still Canada. And once you finish, you are not going to be restricted
where you live.
Yes, so I narrowed my search further down to the rural areas. So the least, like Emmanuel indicated, the least
patronized universities.
So the least attractive provinces. So Newfoundland, British Columbia. When you come to British Columbia, you look at the rural part of British Columbia and all those places. So that was how I got the school for my friend. So when I got in, she was supposed to find a supervisor. So I was like, okay, how do I go about that? Fortunately, on the school's website, they had something called, I think, your statement of interest, which you need to attach to your application. So they had requirements on what they expect to see. If you are doing an application to a school, you need to thoroughly explore the school's website, because there are situations that they provide you with the information that they need. So if you're writing a statement of interest and your statement of interest does not capture those details, you are going to miss out. So you make sure that your statement of interest is tailored along the line of what they are expecting to see. And then if you have any other information which you think is going to be useful and helpful to your application, then you add that up to complement what they are asking for. So with the application I did for my friend, they were looking at your work experience, where you are working, why you want to do that particular course, what do you hope to achieve at the end of your study, and what do you want to do with the course, and what is the link between the course you have done, let's say if you are doing your master's, what you did in your first degree, and what you want to do for your master's, or if it's a PhD, what you did for your master's and what you are going to do for your PhD. Sometimes you don't get the direct link, but if you sit down quietly and look at the course background, if you visit the website of every school, they give you an overview of what the course is all about, the course content. So you can read the course content, pick out certain detailed information from there, and then draw a link between that content and what you are probably doing or you hope to achieve. So that is what I did. I think I wrote that statement of interest, and then I gave it to people to also take a
Read it
second look
through.
at it. Yes, because you cannot just, I mean, people will say knowledge does not reside in one's person's mind, right? So I give it to people to look at it. I applied to just one school for her, and then that was it. She got the admission. So I was like, okay, now you know it is not something extraordinary.
Undoable.
You just need to sit down, give yourself time, and dedicate yourself to it. Just research. I think one problem I find most of the time is that people are not ready
The
to
time.
dedicate much time to what they want. So they
Yeah.
want to travel, they want to explore the opportunities abroad, they want to go to school abroad, but they are not ready to do what it takes. And sometimes they just want people to do it for them, and then they end up paying so much. Meanwhile, if they had just believed in themselves, sat down and then tried it, would have been successful. So yeah, that was one thing I considered. And I think she was a family person. My family was a family person too. So the other things I considered was, there's people have so many reasons for traveling. So I asked her, what is your reason for traveling? Why do you want to travel? Do you just want to go to school, get your international certificate, and come back home? So it's like, oh no, when I go, I want to be able to go with my family. I want to be able to stay afterwards. I was like, okay, then let's look at country. So this brings me to why I settled on Canada. Let's
Canada.
look at countries that have flexible policies for international students. So I looked at
And families.
families. So I looked at the UK, I looked at the US, and then I looked at Canada, and I realized that Canada had very favorable. I mean, at the time, I mean, not now. At the time, that was about 2 3 years ago. At the time,
Ago.
so at that time, you could, if you are coming as a student, you could bring your spouse and all your children. It didn't matter how many children you had, you could bring all of them, and your partner could work. Unlike places like the US, like I heard you could go. I read you could go with your spouse, but your spouse was going to be restricted in terms of work and all that. So that was also another reason why I chose Canada for her. And then when I got the opportunity to travel here myself, and then I got to speak to people and get to know about people's experiences, I realized that it was much better moving to Canada for studies, and also as a family person. And also, even if you are single, for someone who intends to stay in the country, they had the best policies. That is why I was advocating for studying in
In Canada.
Canada. And I took advantage of this myself. So I'm currently here with my spouse and my kids.
Mm.
You understand? So this is some of the few things that makes Canada, let's say, a viable and attractive place for people to move in to come and study. I think another thing was that comparatively, the tuition was a bit cheaper if you compare it to what you have
US
to pay in the
and
UK
UK. UK.
and in the US. So my layman's understanding was that, okay, comparatively in Ghana or in Nigeria, if you are converting CDs to Canadian dollars,
Dollar.
the rate was lower compared to converting Ghana
US and
cedis to the US and then pounds.
pounds.
So it means I was going to use less Ghana cedis to pay for my tuition if I was coming for the first year in
Mhm.
in in Canada
In
than
case of no scholarship,
in
right?
case of no scholarship. And I always tell people that when you are doing it, first bear in mind that you are going to fund your studies yourself. So that when you get the scholarship, you know that you are already prepared for it. And then if you don't get the scholarship, you already have the funds that you are going to. You understand? So first have that, um, be prepared for that. So these were some of the few reasons why I advise
Good
people to
advocacy.
choose Canada over, yeah, other places.
Okay, Papi, please use the link that is for the general observation, not for the studio. I'm not admitting the Papi into the studio. So thank you so much, Dr. Opari, for the interesting presentation. Before we tackle the questions here from Mohammed Ibrahim Gariba, I would want to um, elaborate on something that you mentioned about contracting people to apply for you and charging $10,000 or so. I feel that people in this business use the vulnerability of interested applicants or candidates to extort money from them. I'm going to be sincere and be genuine with you. Right now, I have a group that I call Do It Yourself, DIY, study abroad tips. And these are some of the reasons why I'm even organizing this, so that you experienced people can share and people can learn from that and be able to do it themselves. I think sometimes where it might be difficult to get help is, like you said, you write your statement of purpose, statement of intent, whatever, and then you ask someone experienced to double check it for you, how to present your CV, motivation letters, and stuff. You may need help. So there are agencies, they will say that consultation fee $250, with the hope of they will get you scholarship and stuff. You have to pay the consultation fee, and then you would go for the consultation, and now they'll tell you that if we need to find a scholarship for you, we're going to charge you 10,000 US dollars, knowing that you will not have that money to pay them. But they have already taken the consultation fee. You can't take back the consultation fee, right? So even if they get 20 people charging them consultation fee that much, and none of them apply, they're still making enough money. In Ghana, 250. And one lady, a nurse, told me about this experience. Her experience, like you were saying, they charge consultation fee. She goes and they say she should pay 11,000. If she has 11,000, she can easily pay 2-year master's program in any European country and be okay.
Exactly.
So I think that, like you said, people should invest time, study abroad. I would say it's a business, or it's a big industry. You need to invest time and some resources into yourself. Like you mentioned about the when you were in school, you leverage your presence in school to explore options. There are people who go to school, they don't even have any relationship with any lecturer. They leave, and later on they feel like they want to study abroad and now get recommendation letters, and they cannot provide recommendation letters because they have no relationship with lecturers. So I feel like we are using this platform also to enlighten people, and I really want to thank you for bringing that aspect of the study abroad issues up. Ima, the first question from Mohammed is that, did you apply for the masters using your bachelor's degree from Ghana or the masters from Czech, or both?
Yeah, in my case, I applied, of course, because I had a master's degree in Czech Republic. I wouldn't leave that out. So I did apply with my bachelor's from Ghana and my master's degree from Czech Republic. But then I know a lot of colleagues who only applied with a bachelor's degree from Ghana. So in my class, for example, we have like a lot of Ghanaians who have their who just have their first bachelor's degree, and they've applied to the same master's program in which I am. And so yeah, I mean, if you check on the university's website, you see the requirements, just as Madam Grace spoke about. So you see exactly what is required of you. You do not have to have a first master's degree elsewhere. I mean, maybe sometimes it helps a little bit, but then
I
if
think
that
I know. I think I find the reason why he's asking the question. Usually, some people are of the opinion that if you have a master's, why are you applying for another master's? And that might work against you. But trust me, in some cases, it's even advantageous. I remember when I was a TA at UCC and I was applying for the Erasmus Mundus scholarship, right? There was this guy who was a research assistant, He's quite a bit older than me, and he had masters already. But that year we applied for the Turkish government scholarship and also this Erasmus Mundus. He got all, I got none. And he used all the how do you call it? The masters as well. But then the Erasmus Mundus was also another masters, right? Secondly, if you don't want to use the masters, then you want to account for what you did within that period of break. Did you use so from the bachelors, if you obtained bachelors in 2017 and you are applying for a master's in Canada in 2024, and you don't want to use the masters that you have obtained from Czech Republic in 2023, then you have to account for the space. What did you do in your CV? And probably you may not find anything suitable apart from the masters. I feel that I don't have to say this, but for example, I was trying to apply for a master's in a certain program. I have PhD, right? And I feel like that master's would be very necessary for my professional development. I have to use everything from bachelor's to PhD, and that doesn't necessarily disqualifies me. I need to explain and convince them why I feel that this master's is necessary for me, even though I have a PhD. So I don't think there is a
Actually,
limitation in terms of using the master. But if somebody else has another opinion, you can share. Grace.
actually,
I'll go to Grace before Ima.
no, just to add.
Oh, okay, on the same. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't know this is why he was asking, but if this is why he was asking, then yeah, I mean, so for my program specifically, right? It's a professional program, and so it actually helps if you have a bit of diverse backgrounds in other areas before you do this program. And just like you said, if you do not have any, if I did not have any master's degree, of course I would have had to like provided a resume that shows some places I've worked, what I did, and all that. Because again, this program is designed in such a way that it helps if you have a bit of practical experience. So again, it goes back to Grace's point. You have to look at the requirements of the program, and you have to know how to approach that particular application, right? So if I checked all of those things, that I know that okay, it helps if I add my master's degree, because when I was doing my master's degree, I was at the same time working. So if I noticed that I didn't have to, or I didn't want to use my master's degree, of course I could have provided a resume that would show that within the space when I wasn't doing my master's degree, I was working elsewhere, which would all have helped in my case. But then, yeah. So the point is, you need to know the requirements of the program. You need to know how to best approach it, and yeah. Usually, I think applying for schools in Canada is one of the least difficult things to do in the whole process.
Yeah.
When I was in Ghana and I had just my bachelor's degree, it was very easy for me to get admissions to lots of schools. I got admissions into Dalhousie University, Mount Allison. Like it was very easy. I felt like you just have to apply. You just have to make sure you meet the requirements and just apply. It always worked out for me. So for me, that part is not part of the difficult aspects of the whole process at all. It was rather about the visa application process, how to properly put the documents together and then apply. Yeah. So about the schools, I think nobody should have too much problem with it. Maybe you just haven't applied. That's why you feel.
I will come back. I will come back to you guys. Hello, Francis Bacon. I'm not sure who sent this particular link to you, but you're not supposed to be in the studio. I'm sending a link in the private chat here, so use the link to please enjoy the session, and then eventually we will send you can send your question through the comment section. Okay. So please, Francis, I'm removing you. All right. So I think there was an
I just want to add a little to the question that he earlier asked. So I did
mhm,
this application for someone who had a PhD, who was coming to do a master's.
mhm,
The question: if you have a PhD, why do you even want to do it? It means you already have a master's.
mhm,
So when I did application, I mean, the difference was that okay, this person already has a PhD in this, has a master's already here, and did a PhD in this area, and this is the kind of job the person is doing. Now, in the person's job, there's this new area that the person wants to explore. And then, in order for the person to be able to explore that, the person is going to need a master's in that area to explore it. And then I was
mhm.
like, so when the person do the master's in this particular, let's say master's in African studies, I'm using African studies because it's my area. It's like, so if the person do the master's in African studies and focuses on religion, this is how he's going to help the person's job. And then although the person had a P, the person got the
Definitely.
the admission for the master. So it doesn't really
Definitely.
matter. You don't really need to hide information. In fact, I always tell people when you are doing application to these advanced countries, you need to be as honest as possible because you have no idea
What they are
when you are
considering.
going to discover that you lied in the, because when you are submitting the application, you do an undertaking that every
Yeah.
information you've provided is accurate and that you haven't told any lie, you haven't hidden any information. So
Exactly.
do not really worry about that. The most important thing is how to draw the link and to be able to show that yes, I have like 3 masters, but I still want to do this masters, and these are my reasons. And your
Exactly.
reasons are sound.
Valid. Yeah.
That's all.
For example, let me tell you, I did something related to parasitology. My background, I started with agriculture. I came to do uh, natural resource and environment masters, and then as part of that, I did parasitology as a course, and then from I did my thesis in parasitology, and from then I moved on to do the biomedical aspect of parasitology. Now I go to Ghana for internship, and there is an aspect of field work that I began to enjoy, which relates with public health, global health, and stuff. Now I feel like if I want to be very good in the field research and all that, I need something like this. So it doesn't matter, even having that PhD and stuff, it's a credit to you to show that you are an academic material. You can go through that stress of PhD, then masters, you can easily survive and then overcome it. So the universities are also looking for people who can complete successfully once they are admitted. And so I think, like you said, I agree with you perfectly. I have other questions here. I would want us to tackle them before we go on to our next topic, right? Okay. Ima, there is a second and a third question. I know this, but just answer briefly before we go to the details of your experience there. Are you under any scholarship or you pay your own fees?
No,
I
I'm not.
know, but just say it.
I'm not under any scholarship. I pay my own fees.
For the first year for now. Yeah, okay. Thank you. The third question, which is the last from for you, is that was your wife in Czech or you applied for her from Czech while she was in Ghana? What was his bank statement level? I will
Yeah,
leave that to you.
I'll
But
answer.
I think that his bank statement was enough to show that he can pay for himself.
Yeah. Yes. My wife was with me in Czech Republic. Not that it makes any difference, but then yeah, she was with me. We applied together from Czech Republic to Canada. And about my bank statement, yes, I had enough as it's specified on the IRCC website. So I had enough to cover myself and an additional family member because my wife in this case would be my family member. So I can share a link, but yeah, just you need to look at how much IRCC expects you to have in your account for yourself and for an additional family member. if you're coming with a wife and kids, or yeah. So you need to check all that and know how much money you have to show as proof of funds.
Okay. Great. I agree with you. And then, Grace, there is a question for you. Thank you, Dr. Grace, Dr. Opare, for the presentation. I have a question, please. What advice will you give to someone trying to come using the steady route, though the person already holds a doctorate? So it's also
Before
from Mohammed still. Now, I want to add a little to his question to make it quite clear. All right. The person has a doctorate already. Is the person seeking to come with a master's, a certificate program, a postgraduate certificate, or another PhD? So I think if you consider these three possibilities, you can help advise.
Okay, so I think I touched a little bit on that earlier on. So if you have a PhD, or you want to do a PhD again, a second PhD, there is no rule that prevents you from doing that. If you also have a PhD and you want to do another master's, there is nothing that also prevents you from doing that. When you are doing your school application, you are actually asked to list all your academic credentials. So you have to start from your secondary school, your first degree, your master's, and then your PhD. So yes, you can use your PhD to apply for a second master's. The important thing for you here is for you to show why you want to do that particular master's, and then draw a link between your PhD and then your master's. For instance, you can say that, oh, I have a PhD in African studies. Probably I'm into non-governmental organizations, but I want to do a PhD in public health, or a master's in public health. Okay, the reason is that I found a new career passion. So I now want to explore public health as a career. So in order for me to do that, I have to get the master, because I cannot do that job with my PhD in African studies. Or you can say, oh, in African studies, we have African medicine, African technology. So this is also a new area within African studies, which I have found that I want to explore. So you realize that you are doing public health, which is different from African studies, but you are still drawing a link between your public health and the certificates you already have. So the important thing is drawing the link. It doesn't come easy. You should be able to sit down to think about it and then put it into writing. And you can find that information by reading the course overview of the course you want to do. If it's public health, go to the school's website. They give you a background of what the course is about. Like, oh, this course is about this, and that, and that. If you finish this course, you can do this work. You get your basic information from there, and then from there you can build on it to write your statement of interest or whatever to put in your application. Yeah, so you can do a master's even if you have a PhD, and then you can do a second PhD even if you already have a first PhD. Yeah.
I agree. And Mohammed, I feel like you're a scholar already and you know why you're asking these questions. What I would want to add to Grace is that there are challenges whether you want to go and study you want to apply for another PhD or master's. And even the master's, there are two forms. And I will tell you, like she earlier on indicated, for every PhD, you need a supervisor ahead of time before you can even some of them before you can even submit your application, because for some universities you would need to fill a place potential supervisor information, and if you don't have and you cannot fill that part, you cannot move to the next step. So in that case, and sometimes finding this potential supervisor can be hectic. You can write several emails depending on how good and how catchy your emails are. You may get response, you may not get, you may get declined several times, and so on and so forth. So that is one stress that you're going to have to deal with when you're applying for the PhD. Another also, if you are applying for masters by research, you have to go through that same procedure. But if you are applying for masters non-thesis option, you don't need to find a supervisor ahead of time, and that makes the application a little bit more easier. But also, when it comes to funding, most of the research-based study programs are funded over the non-research-based program. So you have to consider all these options. And yeah, if you want to use any of the routes, you consider the pros and cons. But then, if you are going to need a supervisor, you don't try to approach a supervisor when it is about 2 weeks, 1 month to the submission deadline. You will not get any positive feedback. You have to start working, connecting with the supervisor as soon as you decide to study abroad, and work through the process to the stage that you will get them maybe several months before you put in your application. And I think Dr. Opari would be willing to help in that aspect, to guide and provide some tidbits
Okay.
on or tips on those aspects as we go on. Yeah, Ima, I was complaining of your voice. Someone is saying that it seems your voice is low. Also, Theophilus, try to explore the volume of your machine. You might increase it a little bit more. And yes, Theo, you can read theater art as a master's. When you read art education as a bachelor's, you still have to, I think Dr. Grace Opari has already elaborated that you have to explain why you want to, and link your current experience and knowledge and skills to why you want that. Okay. Yeah, so far that's the questions
Okay.
from
So
our audience, and now we come back to ourselves, right?
yeah, so let me touch a little bit on how you can secure a supervisor. Like you rightly mentioned, the thesis based and the research based. So it is important for you to note that if you are interested in getting a scholarship, it means that you should be able to get an admission into a master's program that is research based. If your purpose is to get a scholarship, then a course based master's is not your option because they don't have funding for course based. I mean, the funding, they are more interested in the research that you are going to do. So bear in mind, if you are someone who is afraid of writing a thesis, then you should probably forget about getting funding. I hope I'm not too harsh with that, but it's the fact.
Oh, it's a fact. A fact
Yeah.
is
It's the fact. If you're afraid of writing a thesis, then you shouldn't even think about getting funding. So with the supervisor, now it's all everything goes back to the school's website. So let's say, for instance, you've decided to do a program, let's say University of Toronto or University of British Columbia, whatever university you've chosen, and then you are doing research based. You need to look at your research topic and then what you are trying to do. What do you hope to achieve at the end of your research? And then you go to the school's website. Let's say you are going to do African Studies. You go to the Department of African Studies website, and then you look at the profile of all the lecturers. You look at all their profile. So I'm doing African Studies. My specialization is in culture and religion. So I go to the website and then look at all the lecturers, and then I pick out those ones whose areas of interest and research are in culture and religion. So know that, okay, these are the lecturers who are going to be interested in my research. So I note them down. Then I look at their previous researches. What have they worked on? What were their findings? I was like, okay, so which of these, if I pick out like 5, which of them is going to be more interested in what I'm doing? And when I settle down on that, that is when I sit down to write my letter. Now, in your letter, well, for what I did, what I tried out for someone, you have to introduce yourself, basic background, your name, your academic credentials is very important. Your first and your academic credentials. It's an academic environment, so they're going to be more interested in your academic credentials. What have you done so far? What research have you done? What was your research area? What was your interest? So you put that down, and then you tell them about what you want to do. Oh, I want to come to this university. I want to do this research. I want to explore religion in Africa and mental health or whatever. So you give a brief background about your research, and then you tell them how um, your research area probably ties in what they are doing and why you think they are going to be, let's say, better supervisors for you. So you have to put all that information into your email and then you send it to them. Your email has to be detailed. You don't just have to say, my name is this and I want to do a master's here. That's it. They won't mind you. You have to focus more on your research area, on your job experience, on your research experience, on the kind of research you want to do, and why the relevance of your research is very important. Okay, so you want to do religion and mental health. Why do you want to do that? So this and this and these are the reasons. At the end of the day, I'm going to use it for this and this and that. So they know that, okay, this is a viable research area that I should be interested in. So these are some of the things that you need to make it stand out. It shouldn't be too long, but it should capture all the essential details and information that you want the person to see. Sometimes it's even important to add a proposal of your research area, maybe 3-page or a 2-page proposal, so that the supervisor can read what you are really interested in researching. And that based on that, they may be able to determine if they are going to be interested in working with you on your research or not. So that's a little bit about how you can find a supervisor. First, go to the website, go to the department's website, look out for the faculties, read about them, know their areas of interest and research. Find those ones whose areas of research aligns with your own research. Write an email to them. In the email, your research experience, your job experience, what you are going to research on, the relevance of your research, why you see them as better supervisors. Put all of that into a very simple, catchy email, and then you send it to them. And I'm sure, I mean, you are likely to get a response. Yeah.
Great. That's the important part. And I will just add to what Grace has just said that apart from finding the ones whose research interest aligns with you, there are others who also have ongoing projects or research funded. So you may also want to adjust yourself to fit into their already existing project based on your background. It doesn't necessarily mean that if that is not your interest, you don't have passion for just because they have funding, you should apply for. No. But if you have the background, but you already have research proposal in your mind, but getting funding for that would be quite difficult. You can adapt to the already existing project. You have to use that. And these days there are emerging topics that will easily attract you a supervisor and a funding. And so invest time to look at trending gray areas in your field, not just because you think that you want to do something in Africa and stuff and you want to study in Canada and you have a proposal about that. It will easily be funded. You should look at the trending topics, the trending areas of research in that your particular field, and tailor your proposals and interest towards those field, and then you would easily get a supervisor as well as funding, probably. Ima says he has a question. I think
Yeah. So just Dr. Grace, and maybe Enoch, assuming somebody, I'm asking this for everyone else, assuming somebody has done a comprehensive application, reached out to a supervisor as best as, for example, you described, what do you think are the chances of the person getting a supervisor? Does it mean, is the fact that the person does everything right, would it mean the person would automatically secure a supervisor? Or what are the chances? What do you think are the chances of somebody getting a supervisor, even if they do everything right here in Canada?
Do you want me to start or you start, Grace?
Go
Okay,
ahead.
Grace. Yeah, we'll start.
Okay, so I wouldn't say automatic. I don't want to use the word automatic, but your chances are higher.
How
Your
high?
chance,
Give
your
me, give
chances
me
are
number.
maybe about 70 to 80%.
Okay.
Yes, and
Okay,
what you Mhm.
so quickly, why I will not give a percentage is that one, whether the no, I have experiences. I want to use
It's
that
true.
to maybe not necessarily in Canada. It depends on whether that supervisor you are contacting is currently receiving
Students.
PhD students or research students. Sometimes when you go to the website of the faculty or the faculty member, they have their teams. And if you
Mhm.
see they have a postdocs, they have several PhDs and some masters, they are done. Doesn't matter how, yeah, because man, supervising 1, 2, 3 PhD is not easy. So sometimes you have to inquire whether the person is having fun. I was doing one application. I contacted the person. I checked the person's team. It's like even some SSS leaver or secondary school leaver in the lab and another person. So I felt like, oh, this is a small team
Yeah.
which could possibly absorb. I wrote and he said he doesn't have funding, right? So you can do everything right, and the person you are contacting's current situation will determine. But as Grace also said, when the faculty has open position to apply for PhD, it also means that there are possibilities to find supervisors because they also know it's a part of the requirement, right?
Mhm.
So when she was talking, she even mentioned that at least she will find 5 people who are closer to her area or where she has experience and knowledge, and then track them. So maybe you will not just have to write to one person, but yes, if you do everything right and you contact the right people, your success rate is high.
Yeah, that's just a message I wanted to get across, that you could do everything right, but then based on their circumstances, based on the fact that they don't have funding, based on the fact that it's a small faculty. Like my faculty, for example, exactly what I'm doing, it has a counter, like a similar program that is research based.
Research based.
And I think last year they only admitted only 3 people. So you can imagine how small the faculty is in terms of research. So a lot of things come to play. You don't just assume that because you did everything right for just one person,
Mhm.
one should automatically happen for you.
The question before we come back to our main subject that I would ask for our audience is that in this case, what would you admonish? And I would also add that sometimes getting the supervisor from afar
Mhm.
can be can
Yeah,
be quite tricky or difficult. There are cases I have advised people that if you have the opportunity to put, and sometimes because I give this advice because these people want to come to want to study abroad, they have quite limited weeks or months to do the application and get admitted and come. And if they want to search for PhD supervisor, irrespective of which country, they may miss the application for that year. So apply for the masters, all right. Come when you come and you attend lectures, you are likely to meet some of these lecturers whose interests you align with. Talk to them that you already have a background and all this. And if they are willing to cooperate with you, the subsequent year, you will just apply for the PhD and then you enroll. So that is one way you can use. And I think, Ima, you are doing non-thesis based
Yeah,
masters, right?
yeah, that's right.
Eventually, now that he knows the situation in the field, if he wants to probably in the future go into research based, you can start talking with the
Yeah, so
supervisors now.
what you just said is exactly what happened to me. So I went to one lady who is doing research in an area that I'm very interested in, very related to what I did for my older master's degree in Czech Republic. And yeah, I mean, just as you're saying, it would have been. I almost go ahead to basically agree to work with me in the next year and all that, but then in the end, I rather had to decline because I realized that she was looking for somebody she could work with in the long term. So she was looking for somebody who would do the master's degree with her and go on to do a PhD
PhD.
with her because she had topics that were running for like 6 years already and that were expected to run for the next 6 years. And I wasn't interested in that. I wasn't interested in such huge.
Really?
So sometimes it depends. And yeah, like you said, sometimes it makes it easy if you're already in the country doing a course-based program, and then you actually make up book appointments, go see some supervisors, and yeah, try to talk your way into changing programs.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works. Yeah.
Okay. So before I go to Ima now, Grace, so what are some of the, I know that you gave us quite detailed information or lecture on the how you did the search and all those things. And we didn't specify them, for example, whether scholarship or non-scholarship and stuff. What is it like with the scholarship and funding terrain in Canada? I know from for me, I know that you have stated some of them along the line of the discussion, but not categorically under this, and some people might not be able to make them out. So for now, can you enlighten us a little bit about this terrain? And as she prepares to give us, Ima, I will come to you about the funding aspect. Someone asked and you gave a brief answer, but we will come to you for further details on that.
Okay, so with funding in my search, what I've come to know is that when it comes to um masters in Canada, like we've already indicated, there are research-based masters that already come with funding, but your chances of getting that funding is based on your research topic, how relevant your research is to that particular funding. So in that case, once you secure the admission, it comes with the funding itself. Another thing I've also come to know is that apart from that, there are also some, I wouldn't say scholarship, like
Yeah.
grants that students are able to explore once they have enrolled in that school. So when you go to the website of every institution, and then you go to the part of where they have funds and financial aid, you realize that they have so many categories, so many funding categories. So you may
Mm-hmm.
have the student entrance applications, so many. One university I explored was the University of Alberta. When you go to University of Alberta, you realize that they have funding for Canadian people, and they also have funding for international students. But while some of their funding is are tied to the research of the courses you are going to do, there are other grants that if you come in as a non-research student, you are going to be able to explore. So you should,
academic excellence, scholarships, and all
yes.
that.
And I think one thing I found very interesting is that some of these scholarships are not just looking at your academic credentials. They are looking at your experience,
Yes.
your leadership
Chip
skills,
skills,
your work experience, your
volunteering, your
volunteer.
volunteering.
So it just struck me that okay, so it means that just having a 4.0
It's
may
not
not be
enough.
the only thing that you need to explore.
No.
So those of us out there who still have the opportunity, there are some of us we don't we may start on that opportunity. But if you are out there doing a first degree or even doing or even in secondary school, because there are people who are able to apply for bachelor's degree to Canada with their secondary school certificate. If you are in secondary school or you are doing a master's and you are hoping to do a PhD, please don't just concentrate on the books.
Great.
The books are very important. Focus on getting the 4.0, the 3.9, and the rest. But also dedicate your time to other extracurricular activities, volunteering, leadership skills, community services. All of that comes together to build you up and set you up for future scholarship opportunities abroad. So that's a little bit of how the funding system is like. I came across this funding Mastercard Foundation Scholars. Mastercard Foundation Scholars is a huge funding, but it is associated with particular schools. So, in order for you to get access to that funding, you should secure an admission in that particular school. And like we've already indicated, for you to secure an admission in that particular school, it should also be tailored towards your research area. So with the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program, I realized that they are associated with the University of Toronto, the University of British Columbia, and then the McGill University. So if you are looking at applying for the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program, you should be looking at getting admission into these universities. There is the Karen McLean International Leader of Tomorrow Award. So there are so many. There are so many. All you have to do is to make time to explore them. If those scholarships are attached to schools, you make sure you are able to secure an admission in that school to be able to access that funding. Even if you don't, and then you begin research, you come in for a course-based program, there are still other forms of grants that you can apply for to support yourself whilst you are in school. So this is a little bit of what I can say about the scholarship opportunities I know in Canada. Okay, and just to add a little bit, some of the funding may be fully funded, so you get everything covered, and there are other situations you get partial funding for your studies. Whichever way, you should be open to whatever opportunity that may come your way. There was this friend I met whilst I was doing my PhD in Ghana. He was into religion and mental health. Now, this person had completed his master's in 2013. I met him in 2017. And then he was telling me that he wants to go to Cambridge University. His dream is to go to, I'm just using this to cite an example for us. His dream is to go to Cambridge University or Harvard. And that he just doesn't want to go to Cambridge or Harvard. He doesn't have the money to pay. So he wants to go with funding. So until he secures funding in that university, he wasn't going to do his PhD. So it had been like 3 or 4 years already. So I asked, so what have you been doing all these years? Now, from my interaction with him, he became a very good close friend for me whilst in the PS. I learned a lot from him. So whilst he was in that waiting period, trying to get Cambridge or Harvard and with funding, he dedicated his time to doing research and then publishing. He was a very good writer. And he was working with a lecturer at University of Ghana. Fortunately for him, this lecturer also had
Connections.
external research projects and funding. So whilst he was doing the work with the lecturer, he got the opportunity to meet these people. And they were actually in Finland. And he did the work and the publication so well that there was a PhD position in Finland. And then the project managers offered that to him. Because it wasn't his dream school, he was a bit skeptical. I was like, hey, Mr. Man, I think it's a very good opportunity for you to take. So he took that opportunity. And then whilst he was in Finland, he finally got funding for Cambridge. What am I saying here? He had a dream. He knew what he had to do to achieve that dream. He knew it was going to take him time, but he was ready to go through the process and to finally achieve his dream. Now, getting funding abroad is not an easy journey.
I
It's
tell
not
you,
something you wake up in January and then in
and
March.
get it in March.
No, it takes time. So you should be focused, know what you want, how you are going to achieve that, and then give yourself time to work towards it. If it's something you really want to do, if it's a year, 2 or 3 that you even have to wait to secure that thing, you should be able to give yourself that time. And that time shouldn't go waste. Whatever you do within that period should be one that will eventually contribute to you achieving that dream. So if you apply for funding this year and you don't get it, do not be discouraged. Build yourself more to put yourself in a better place for the next opportunity. You are not going to be the only person applying. It's going to be so many people around the world, highly competitive.
The Indians.
So many, so much. The question you should be asking yourself is what makes you a better candidate than the other person? So you need to invest so much in yourself and put yourself in a better position above the other person so that you can secure the funding you are so much looking forward to.
Despite being the host of this program, I think I'm enjoying today's program so much, and
Yeah,
I'm loving it. It's like uh, Dr. Grace Opare has just opened my head and just taking out everything
you had in
that I
mind.
have inside my head and telling you people. I'm telling you, and mostly the experience I have had with people who decide to study abroad is that some of them, unlike this guy you met, they spend their days wasting it instead of doing something that will add to their credentials, that will let them stand out. I am planning of having a mentorship program for free because I realized that, for example, as you said, if you are going into research program and you need funding, of course, that is where the fundings are. You need to have certain experience with research, not necessarily even publishing. Even if you have some statistical analysis skills, data analysis skills, it adds to you. But from the undergraduate, they do very basic minimum research with tables everywhere and stuff. And this you can't convince somebody for external. So I'm planning this program, this mentorship program, just as people wait to enter to get funding, they can use it to gain experience in research. What I intend doing is, for example, if I find somebody who is interested in African studies and I know Dr. Opare is doing something, just attach her, attach the person to you, help them in the field, gain some knowledge. I just bring the people, align them with people who have similar interest in the academia and help them get at least, if nothing at all, literature review skills or experience, which can be an added advantage to their degree. Everybody in my university, you know, the Indians are everywhere. Even the Chinese are also coming. The Chinese are coming
So many.
around. You are competing with so many people, and some of these they know the technology by heart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if all you have is your GPA and your research, when I look at this is writing sample and I check and I don't even see any statistical analysis, you didn't even use any statistical software, and you want me to fund you, I am a Ghanaian, I'm not even going to accept you, because the funding is an investment. They want to invest in people who can produce something for them as well.
Yes.
And for the reputation of the university. They not just have money that they want to dash out. No way. So you should prove that you are worth investing in, and this you do by getting extra. And like you said, the volunteering, the extracurricular, of course, knowledge is gained to share and for the benefit of society. And if you are saying that you have gone to study agriculture, you have had first class honors, and you have conducted research on cocoa yields and stuff, and maybe you finish, you have not had any job to do, and you have sat home 5 years, you write a CV, and your CV, you have no job experience, and you didn't even use part of the time to volunteer and help farmers learn how they can increase their crop yield in this, and you want another person to invest in you. What will happen after getting that investment? How are you going to use the knowledge to benefit society?
Mhm.
So trust me, you may look down upon those things, but they are things these people are looking for. How useful you will be, not just to the scientific community, but also to the immediate community, how they benefit. And this, what we are doing right now, is part of the community service that you can put in your application to convince your potential employer or admissions officers that yes, you are a useful person, you like to share knowledge, you like to help other people. And so you have already answered a question here which was asking you to expound on scholarship opportunities in Canada. Thank you very much. There is one question. Ima, you can tackle this briefly, and then I will come to you on the funded aspect and how to navigate if you are not being funded and you are self-funding. um what else? I know it's not been long, but what preparation you need to put in place and how to navigate in terms of working and then studying at the same time. So the question is, um somebody says, so now I know why supervisors don't respond to most of my emails. But that aside, his question is, can you share some major changes by the IRCC affecting students which didn't exist previously? How can I prepare for it? I have shared the link in the comment section, but I think he can highlight one or two of them. For example, the accommodation issues, the cap on the number of intake and stuff. If you have any knowledge on it, Ima.
Yeah. So there's been like a lot. The cap, for example, is one of the most was one of the most critical uh, changes that came in last year. I also, yeah, I think it was also last year that they increased the amount of money that you need to show as proof of funds, right? So initially it used to be your school fees, for example, plus 10,000 Canadian dollars. Now it's like your fees plus at least 20,000 Canadian dollars, and then whatever for your spouse and all that. You find these changes, don't be too surprised because you find all of these changes on IRCC platform. There's also another interesting change about moving or like uh, traveling with your spouse. So initially, I think even as of the beginning of last year or so, even if you were a bachelor's degree, if you're applying to pursue a bachelor's degree or whatever, you could easily travel with your spouse. So you will get a study permit, and then your wife would have an open work permit to come work and then support you. But then last year they changed all of that to allow only master's degree students or higher. So either master's degree or PhD students. Only these guys could bring their spouses with them into Canada. And then again they changed they changed a little bit of that to allow only master's degree students who are enrolled in a 2-year program the opportunity to bring their spouses with them into the country. So a lot, as I'm speaking, it could be that by next week they would say only PhD students can bring their spouses with them, like their family basically with them into the country. So there's a lot changing from time to time, and yeah, it's really it helps if you're able to track the news on the RSCC platform. But then for specific people, specific changes might not affect you. So sometimes depending on your situation, I can better like advise on what changes you should look out for. But the biggest was like the cap, and then traveling with your spouse, and then yeah, a little bit around that.
And for some states, or for some states, you need accommodation, like the assurance that you may find accommodation from, is it the municipality or whatever? Do you have
But
an idea?
I don't know about this particular one. If you're talking about states, then that would be the US. But then in Canada, I haven't.
No, in Canada,
Oh,
particularly some states, because of a resident or accommodation issue, and even for this reason, they have limited certain colleges
mhm.
which were doing this short program from admitting students from international students.
Yeah.
So when you get when you get admission offer from certain provinces or states or whatever it is, you need also to request for accommodation, that need a letter of assurance that you can find accommodation, so that people don't come stranded with accommodation.
I wouldn't be surprised because another big change was that so at first you could come into Canada with
Can you
any.
come closer to your microphone and speak a bit louder? Yeah.
Sorry. So another big change is that at first you could come into the country with any university and then finish school and get a postgraduate work permit. But then now there's a lot of changes to that too. You cannot just come to any university that does short. I don't mean university. I mean like any academic
College.
institution or college
Yeah.
and do any short course and then expect that after the school you'd get the opportunity to work in the country. So there's a lot of changes like that happening from time to time. And I'm not surprised about this accommodation thing because last year again they introduced this provincial attestation letters for bachelor degree students. So these guys would have to, on top of the admission letters that they get from the schools, they also had to request for provincial attestation letters from the universities to attach when they are doing their visa application. At first, it used to be for only bachelor degree students, but then now it moved on to even master's degree students. So for international students looking to do master's degree, you also need that kind of attestation letter from the university. And so, yeah, depending on your specific situation, certain rules might really touch you a bit. So you have to look into all the small changes. But yeah, basically those were the big changes that happened last year.
Did you touch on the colleges, the caps for the colleges?
No,
No,
please
Okay.
give us.
So I'll just add, I think he's summarized, I mean, he talked about most of them. And we're colleges. Before last year or 2 years ago, you could come to a college for a 1 year or a 2 year diploma degree, and you had all the benefits. You could come with your spouse, your kids, work. Your spouse can work full time. You can work. You could also work whilst you are studying, and then when you finish school, you were eligible for postgraduate work permit for like 3 years. After which you can move on to get your permanent residence and all that. But when the changes came in, the colleges were the first places
yeah,
to be really affected. So now, for now, I won't advise people to go in for a diploma program here in Canada. And if for some reason you have to, I'll have to do the research and then share the link with you. There are specific programs that if you do in colleges, you may be able to get postgraduate work permits after your after completion. So if you are looking at doing a diploma program, then you should be very intentional about the course you choose to do. You cannot just do any course like before where you get all the benefit. But even if you're going to do that course, you are still going to be affected by those restrictions. You cannot work, you cannot come with your spouse and all that. So for now, I won't advise anybody to come into Canada to do a diploma program. If for nothing, your best shot is to do masters or a PhD or a postdoc. And even with that, with all the restrictions that have come along with it, I still think that there are ways that you can navigate your way through. And then somebody asked about how to fund it, your fees if you don't have funding. I think when I first did application for my friend, she was asked to pay a deposit. So she was asked to pay about 7,000 or so deposit.
Canadian dollars.
Canadian dollars.
Not
Yes,
Ghana
yes.
cedis, not
Let me be
Nigerian
specific.
naira.
Canadian dollars before she was even issued the admission letter. But she finally got the visa. Now, the good news is that 7,000 or whatever amount they ask you to pay goes into your school fees. So if you are able to raise that amount in Ghana to pay, it means that you are going to have some free time on your hands when it comes to paying your school fees. And then the school fees are also paid on semester basis. So if this semester is 4,000, and let's say you've paid like 8,000 to the school, it means the first semester they're going to deduct 4,000. The second semester they'll deduct the next 4,000. The next semester they will expect you to do the payment. By which time you might have secured a job and done some savings. But for best funding, it's very good when you come with your spouse. Because before, international students could work unlimited hours. So if you had an international student and if you wanted to work like 24 hours a week, 24 hours a day, and you had the strength to do it, you could work. Yes, but now that it's restricted. Now you can do maximum, I think, 20 to 24 hours. But
per week, right?
Per week. Yes, per week. So every week, 20 to 24 hours. But if you are lucky enough to come with your spouse, then your spouse can do the full-time work. So with that, if you're able to manage your finances very well, you can be paying your tuition fee right from working here in Canada. And the good thing is that you do not pay the fees in lump sum. You pay it on semester basis. So you can just be targeting, okay, this semester I'm looking at $6,000. You work hard to raise it. You work hard to raise your $6,000. Then, you plan for the next semester. So that is one way you can raise funds here in Canada to pay your tuition. If you also have a business in Ghana, which is very lucrative, you can be bringing money from Ghana to be paying your fees here if you have the means to do that. Yeah, I know people whose family members transfer money to them here to pay for their fees, and I also know people who have paid for all of their fees from working here in Canada. So those are some of the ways you can pay your tuition fee.
Yeah,
that is a good premise for Yuma to come in now. Tell us the rest of that story.
I just want to add a little bit to that
because he is experienced exactly in what you are saying. So
because not all of us are like good writers or like going to get the scholarships and the grants and all the funding that we need. That's the hard truth. And so sometimes trying to find money for yourself is critical. So yeah, in my case, or like in general, what I see people do is just as Dr. Grace said, right? A lot of people try to put some money together from home to pay for the admission deposit, which in effect like accounts for your school fees for that term at the end. But for me, what helped me a lot was that um, because originally I didn't get a chance to come to Canada, and I made a detour through Czech Republic, and I knew I wanted to come to Canada, and I would probably have to pay my own school fees. I started saving right from there. I saved from there little by little for the whole 3 years I was there against my school fees in Canada, just in case I didn't get any funding. But then again, what also helps me a lot is that I came with my wife, right? So my wife actually gets the opportunity to work unlimited hours. Because she is on an open work permit, she can work like as much as she wants. She can do anything she wants, basically. And so it helps me quite a lot because I can only work 24 hours. That is why I would also make this crucial point that if you have a bachelor's degree or if you are in a position where you can actually try to get a master's degree, do that. Because I know a lot of people who have a bachelor's degree in Ghana, but then because they feel it's easier to get admission to the bachelor's into a bachelor's degree program or a diploma program, they target those areas and then they don't venture for the master's programs. But then the truth is, the master's programs actually give you a lot of room to work to. Because in my case, for example, I only have classes like twice a week, and most of them are in the evenings too. So technically, I have a lot of space to work as much as I want if I legally had a chance to work. But then the truth is, I can only work 24 hours. So as much as possible, if you can find a master's degree, and again, a master's degree that is at least going to keep you occupied for 2 years because now it's legal. If you are not enrolled in a master's degree that's at least 2 years, you don't get to bring your spouse with you or your family with you. So if you can get a program that is at least 2 years or like a master's or a PhD, that would be fantastic. You bring your spouse and your family, she can work to support, and then you can also work 24 hours. I'm not saying it's very easy to do this, but there's a very good chance that most people can.
Especially considering that the financial requirement for this particular one is
Yeah,
quite a
quite.
lot of money involved. Yeah.
And
So
another thing I see a lot of people do. So there's this um, empower financing. I don't know if Dr. Grace you know about this, but yeah, there's this empower financing thing that a lot of students also explore. So it's a US
when
based.
they are already in Canada or when they are
You could apply for it even if you're not in Canada, but then you can only apply if you already have admissions to the school, and you have a better chance of getting it if you already have your visa. And if you are also in Canada, it gives you an even bigger chance. So you could find your way into Canada and then explore this financing option because they give you a loan to cover your school fees for the 2 years or whatever you want to come to school. And then they spread it for you like for 10 years or so. Of course, the interest is pretty tricky, but then it's still a way to get some funding for your school. But then it's not free. Again, it's just a loan. So it's something you would have to pay back at the end of your studies. Another last let me just add this last tip. So these days I also advise that if you're looking for a master's degree program that is course based, right? That's not research, that doesn't have funding. It would be advantageous to look for a program that has a co-op attached to the program. So the
it
co-op
has what? A program that has what?
co-op internship, like so it's more like an internship as part of
Oh,
the
okay.
the curriculum.
Mhm.
For example, the program I'm doing now, it has a co-op internship. It's optional. It's not compulsory. But then here in Canada, all internships are paid. It's not like the US where the internship is like you could do an internship for free. If there's an internship attached to the program, it's paid. So if you're able to secure a program like that, right? Sometimes you do this internship in your second year. Sometimes you do this internship after you are done with school. This internship too is another way of making some money to cover your school fees and other, because again the internship would pay you. So if you are lucky enough, if you're able to make it into the, and usually it's not too hard to, like if the program has an internship part of the curriculum, it's not too hard to qualify into the internship. So if you're lucky enough to get into the internship and you work from there, then you can. So for example, in my case, for example, right, even in my first year, I can apply to do the internship in my second year. So in the first year, I'm working, my wife is working, we are paying the school fees gradually until I'm done with my first year. In my second year, if I want to start the internship, the money I get from the internship would be enough to cover my school fees for the second year. It's actually very generous. Like usually the internship money is not so bad. It's pretty good. And so yeah, I feel like that's also another thing people could explore. Like in a lot of the cases for the professional programs, they have this co internship thing. So if you have a choice between two programs, one that has the internship and another that doesn't have it, I would suggest that you do the one that has the internship, so that at least you make some money from there, even as you study, and then you could use that to fund your school as you go on.
Before I come to the visa application process and the requirements and all that for after admission, so not to make it more or less like just because you guys are family members, you are just speaking in favor of people who can come with their spouse or not. So if I am single man and I want to come and study genuinely, and funding is an issue, but I can raise at least my first month, my first year or semester funds. Do you think that subsequently working that 24 hours per week or 20 hours per week, living expenses and stuff would be enough to sustain me, my living expenses plus my tuition for the subsequent year?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yes, I think so. I think you would absolutely be able to raise enough money for your second year. If you're able to raise enough for your first year,
Yeah.
you will have more than enough time to raise money all through your first year and then pay off your second year. Because again, for the second year, you'd be paying in terms. So, for example, you raise enough to cover your second year first term, second term, and then as you're in your second year, you raise enough money to cover whatever remaining terms that you might have. Yeah, you can absolutely.
And I think it's important. I just remembered we point out that although now international students are doing 20 to 24 hours, when school is on break, students are able to work full time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So let's say school goes on break for the
Months.
Christmas break. So let's say you have like about 3 weeks from Christmas to January to start your January semester. You can work full time.
Yeah.
And the part where students get to work more is during the summer break.
Yeah.
3
Where
months, 4
students
months.
go off like from May and they stay home all the way till September. So we have about 4 or 5 months. So at that point, students really they don't joke with their work, because at that time, if you want to work 24 hours a day, you can legally work. So people do a lot of work during that time. Such that even by the time school resumes for your second year, within that short 4 or 5 months, people are able to raise enough money to even cover their cost for the next academic year. So on that score, yeah, if you'll be able to work to support it.
This actually
I
reminds
know this man here, when he was in Czech Republic, he was working 2 full-time jobs and he was still doing Uber.
don't expose all the secrets here. So,
Yeah.
so I'm actually reminded of something. Even though the rule says you can only work 24 hours a week. It doesn't apply to on-campus jobs. So if I had a job on campus, I could work as much as I wanted. And on top of that, I could even do the 24 hours out of campus. So what I'm saying is, if you work on campus, it doesn't count as any hours for you.
Extra job. Okay.
Yes.
So if you are lucky enough to find a job on campus, that is just bonus. You can also even come out of campus and work the 24 hours if you can find something here. So
Stay there. Stay there. Now, it's one thing. It's one thing being able to work to cover, and it's another thing being able to find the job or secure the job. So the question then is how easy, for example, on a scale of 1 to 10, and you with your experience and the location you are, just use your location because I think it can differ from location to location. How easy is it for a graduate student to land a job that they can adequately combine with their studies? Because I don't want to shift the attention from the studies too much to the job, but something that will give them a comfortable, steady program as well as make something for themselves.
so
On a
for
scale of 1 to 10, how easy with that? With 10 being the easiest.
let me put some meat on this. So for the on-campus jobs,
Christina, please join with the link that is for the YouTube, not for the studio. Sorry. Did you send these links to people?
why are you blaming? Why are you thinking it's me?
I'm just asking. You and Grace, who did that?
It's probably me, but yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there is the one that is actually for
Yeah,
joining on YouTube, which is did I send it to you?
you did it, but I see it. I see it now. I see it. I have it.
Okay.
Yeah. So on a scale of 0 to 10, it's pretty hard to find a job on campus, especially because people know that on campus it's on campus
Mhm.
work as much as you want and all that. So I would say a 2 for on campus jobs, depending on who you are, how you are able to connect with the lecturers or whoever. I mean, it depends. In a lot of the times, these things they are individual specific, right? But if you're somebody who is very who knows how to network and all that, you could land a job as a T or whatever on campus. But then it's a 2 because there are limited spaces for the number of students on campus.
Mhm.
Outside,
We can't hear you. Your microphone is missing.
so out of campus, I would say a 7.
Okay.
It's yeah, it's individual specific, like, to be honest, because there are
Mhm.
people who are not so open to doing certain kinds of jobs
Of jobs.
because they thought if you move into Canada, then there's a certain caliber of jobs you're supposed to do or whatever.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say 7 in general. But
Okay.
then there's like a lot of opportunities for students to do jobs for students to do, and yeah, usually they pay quite generously too. So yeah, I would say 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Grace, I know that you are not a student.
Yeah.
Just briefly touch on that question, and also, for example, and that is although not the main subject, like any alternative to studying, any alternative to going to Canada apart from studying. Just a brief comment on that one.
Okay. So I think in terms of work, I think when we moved here and my husband had to find work, most of the people he's actually working with are international students.
Oh,
About 60-70% of the people are international students. So I think, pardon me, once
we
you
are
move here,
pardoning you.
you should be ready to explore any options available to you. You should be able to go down as low as possible to explore other job opportunities. So you find people doing so many jobs. There are care home jobs. They are working as a waiter, serving in places, cleaning jobs. So many. Even I think on campus, when you go into the universities, you find students who are not just teaching assistants. You find students working in the cafeterias. You
Mhm.
find students working on the transportation sector of the school. You
The
find
school.
students. Sometimes I go to the university here. I just go to the library to sit down, sometimes to read. You find students coming in, working at the
Clean.
library, cleaning. So all of that are job opportunities that you can explore. That is if you're not just looking at getting an office work.
Yes, yes. Mhm.
Probably. So all those are there. And then I think when you come to Canada, my experience in looking for work for my husband, I think certain areas are known for certain specific jobs, and then
Mhm.
there are certain jobs you find more immigrants doing that kind of job than others. So once you land there, you should be able to ask yourself, what is the easy job that I can find in this area? And then you begin to explore the application options. And not to be honest with you, it was when I tried to help my husband find a job that I realized that even when you are looking for a job in the hotel, as a
CV.
cleaner, you have to put in an
CV.
application with your CV.
CV.
Honestly, I was like, wow, this is the kind of job that we do not regard in our parts of the world, but here is a highly respectable job that you cannot just walk in and get the job. You
Bro,
submit.
McDonald, just McDonald in
Yeah,
this
yeah,
corner.
yeah.
They're asking for
McDonald's, Tim Hortons.
CV and stuff. And you're
Yes,
like, Jesus
you
Christ.
you 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 submit your CV.
And let me tell you one secret. Sometimes if they want certain people who will be there for a long time, and you have a CV that is portraying you as somebody who is just passing through, they will not pick you.
Yeah.
So for some job, you will not even put your master's qualification on it.
No, 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 no. And
Exactly.
you should tailor your CV to meet the requirement,
Specific demands of that job.
specific demands of
Exactly.
that job.
Anyway, that is a subject of another
Canada.
discussion.
Yeah, yeah. So in summary, you should be able to look out for the how do I put it, the qualifications for the
Mm-hmm.
particular kind of job you do. Where I am here, I think you find most of the African people, Ghanaians, Nigerians, doing a care agency job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where you take care of kids in a residential area. So it's like you become the parent to that person. And
Mm-hmm.
then in our search, realize that in order for you to launch that job, you should have a certificate in first aid.
Mm-hmm.
You should have a certificate in CPR, and then you should have a certificate in food safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then you should also have a driver's license because you'll be driving the person in and out. So once people land and you get to meet them, I meet people at the grocery shop and all that. So I
Mm-hmm.
tell them, if you want this kind, this is this is a very common job in this part of our of the town. If you want to earn it, you need to do this and do that and do that. So people do the qualifications and they are able to secure that job. Connect yourself, like Emmanuel said. When you meet a fellow African, a fellow immigrant, just speak to them. Oh, I just came in, I'm new, I'm looking for a job. They may refer you to
Exactly.
job openings, and that is a very important place to start.
And I heard that in Canada, referrals work
It's
a
very
lot of
important.
ways. Than
Very, very important. Referrals are very important.
It actually reminds me, I have a friend who met some other Jamaican guy, and they were talking about jobs in general. He has been here for a while, and this Jamaican guy was recommending a job for the Ghanaian guy in Quebec or so. And according to him, it's like a tree planting job
mm-hmm.
where he could make like crazy amount of
Amount
money
of money.
in a day, but
Mm-hmm.
during the summer. So yeah, like Dr. Grace said, it's very nice if you're able to connect yourself with other people. It helps a lot. Here it helps a lot. It helps a lot.
I know we are already almost 2 hours through, and I would want to release Dr. Opari for the baby and all that. You are muted.
I said she's awake.
Yeah, so maybe I will give you the opportunity to tell us briefly about this one, and then I will continue the rest with Ima so that you can have time for her, right? So just quickly, I know that you applied for the visa from Ghana, right? Even with your family and all that. So how was the experience like? What need to be considered in all these application? After this, you can give us your final words, and I will continue to explore the other part with Ima because he quite not tight, as you can see.
Oh, really? You think so?
Okay, so like you rightly said, we applied for the visas from Ghana. The first thing we did was to look at the application requirements. So you go to, like you said, RLCC website or canada.ca, and then you get all the requirements. So we looked at the requirements. My husband and I, we worked on the application for like 3 months, 3 or 4 months.
Mhm.
He watched a lot of videos on the application, how to prove your funds, how to prove your home ties, how to put in a strong application. We did all of that. And then the most important part, the part that seemed a bit difficult for
Yeah.
us was the proof of funds part. So we looked at all the various options, how to prove the funds, and then we prepared for it. So the application itself, I think Canada visa application is a bit cumbersome. It's a bit cumbersome. It's time consuming, and you really need to prepare for it. Yes, this is it. So with I just want to touch a little bit about the proof of funds. So at the time, I mean, it wasn't that much, but now, especially if you're coming as a
Family?
student and
Oh,
as family, a lot of things have changed now. When we were coming, I think we first did the application for myself and my husband, and then later on we did visitors visa applications for the kids. So it was when the kids arrived that we used their father's status to change their status here in Canada. So sometimes you need to look at your finances. Do you have enough to cover for yourself and your spouse and your children at the same time? Or can you do it for just yourself and your spouse, or just yourself? Because I believe that once, if it's just you and you have a spouse, you have a family, once you are in, it becomes a bit easier for the other members to also join you. So if you have the resources that it is just going to be for enough for you, you can go ahead and put in your application just for yourself. And for our proof of funds, I think we looked at my husband at the time. I had just started work. I didn't have much, but my husband was coming in, so he had the funds.
mm-hmm,
And I think in the application, he had to put in all his sources of revenue. So it's like
mm-hmm,
I work here, I make this amount from here. I also work here. I make this amount from here. I have this business. Every month is giving me a X amount. Every year I'm able to make the X amount. So if I put everything together, this is how much I'm making for my job. I have a
mm-hmm,
car. Then we use properties. We have this car, we have that car. It is valued at this rate. So all of that, we had to put everything together for
okay.
the proof of funds for the application. So I think with school, Emma will have to touch more about that. But if you are coming in with any other, let's say with on a visitor's visa or something, visitor's visa doesn't really specify how much you need, but it should be enough to cover your travel expenses. And then I think apart from school, you can also come in with a job offer. There are people who are able to secure jobs here in Canada. And in
Mm-hmm,
my experience, people that I have come across, Ghanaians and Nigerians who are here on job offers, are people who are in the tech, the engineers,
Industry.
and then the healthcare industry, the nurses, the
Okay.
doctors,
Okay.
the lab technicians, the engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people who are able to come in, and then also lecturers who are able to secure jobs in teaching universities. They are also able to come
Mm-hmm.
in on job offers, and I think it's one of the best if you can. It also has its own requirements: writing
Mm-hmm.
examination, writing your English proficiency. You should be able to go through that process. If you want a genuine job offer to come in, you should be able to do that. And also, people come in as permanent residents. And I think it's one of the best options, but it takes time. And
Is it the express entry one?
the express entry, and then the provincial one, they are provincial nomination programs.
Oh, okay.
So once I tried reading about the provincial nomination programs, they have various categories. Categories for um business people, category for drivers, construction workers, plumbers, the kind of job that we don't respect in our country.
Yeah,
Those
like
are the kind of jobs they are actually,
landscapers and all that.
yes, surveyors, those who work with the iron rod, with the welders.
Welders,
Yes, so
Farmers, yeah.
yeah,
steel benders.
steel benders and all that. So the provincial nomination programs have different routes or routes for these skilled workers. And if you write your English test and you pass very well, and then you have your certifications, maybe you have a diploma or whatever, HND in welding or in electrical engineering, you can also explore the permanent residence route, which is also one of the best options. People usually don't use the permanent residence route because it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
The study route is a bit faster for people, so most people tend to use that one. So apart from the study route, there is the job option, there is the permanent resident option too for people, and the visitors visa option, which has come under a lot of,
This is it,
yeah, yeah.
So,
Personally, I wouldn't advise if you are just coming to visit and to go back. Yeah, you can do that. But if you want to come in with a visitor's visa
and
and
stay.
overstay, it's a lot. It's so much difficult. So
Okay. Just last one that I wanted to ask you based on what you said was that the proof of funds and stuff were easy. Looking at the fact that you were coming with almost all your family, how were you to prove uh, home ties?
okay, so like I said, the first application we did was just for myself and my husband.
Mm-hmm.
So we used,
Oh, okay, so the kids were there.
yes.
Oh, okay, so use the kids
So we
as
had
well.
2 kids. So we used our kids as home ties. So our kids, our parents, our siblings, and then my husband's company. So the
Oh, okay.
Operator Media Con. So we're like, oh, we already have a company that is fully functional here. So our home ties were our kids, our parents, our siblings, and then our company back at home. And also the job prospects, like, oh, I have a job here. When I go, I'm gonna come back. So that was how we put home ties with that. Yeah.
Okay, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Any final words for our audience as you prepare to leave us to continue with Iman?
Okay. So I've really enjoyed this discussion. I love to share the little knowledge that I have, and since this is a study route discussion platform, and also looking at funding opportunities in Canada, I want to encourage everybody that it is achievable. Whatever you set your mind to do, if it is your dream to study abroad in Canada specifically, have an international certificate, that dream is achievable and you can do it by yourself. Take your time and do your research. Do not rush. It's not something you just get up one day to achieve it. So give yourself time, explore all the opportunities available, and then put in as many applications as
It's
possible.
possible.
As you are working to get very good grades, you should also be looking at extracurricular activities. All of that makes you like gives you a holistic personality or a holistic credential which can land you the opportunity you are so much looking out for. So I wish everybody all the best. Keep your hopes and dreams alive, keep aspiring, look at the eligibility criterias, try to put in strong applications, and hopefully by the grace of God you don't leave God out. Hopefully by the grace of God that dream you are aspiring to will come to pass. So I wish everyone all the best, and then see some of you in Canada very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if someone wants to reach out to you for some help or assistance in the application process, are you available? How do they get to reach you?
Yes, I'm actually available. I have a YouTube channel. It's been dormant for a while. I've been
Babysitting.
oh yeah, since I had the baby, I haven't been able to be very active. So if you send me a message on my my YouTube channel, I'm likely to respond to you. I still maybe you can share my
Yeah.
number and my email address. Anybody you can reach out to me on email or on WhatsApp. I get a lot of messages on email through email and then WhatsApp. So
Oh.
anyhow best I can assist you.
Can you
Please.
put your email in the private chat, and I will put it in the comment section,
Okay, I'll do that.
or any other link by which you want our people to
Sure.
connect with you.
Sure.
And thank you so much for your time and dedication. I could see that you have to juggle between this and your baby, and still
Yeah.
you are committed to sharing with our audience. God bless you so much for your dedication and time, and we hope that this effort you are putting in to help others find opportunities to study elsewhere will not go in vain. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye. And now I would go to Yima. Um, so how was your visa application process, and especially when you were moving with wife and all that? What were the requirements? What were the specific steps you needed to take to um, um, get through the process?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's any different from if I were applying from Ghana. I definitely think it wouldn't be different because when you are doing the application, you first do like a preliminary, uh, more like checklist, and so you specify which country you actually have permanent residence in or citizenship. So based on all that, it kind of gives you like it kind of knows how to what documents to ask you for. So I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure it would be the same for anybody applying from Ghana. But yeah,
Okay.
in my case, it was pretty simple. I highly recommend that nobody uses any connection guide, to be very honest with you, because these connection people have a lot of applications going on for them, and they use similar documents to do applications for people. And so I feel like it doesn't give you as high of a chance to get the visa as you might think, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you. Because if you read it yourself, it has some form of human, unique
Factor.
in factor to the documentation. But anyway, so first of all, you just go to the IRCC platform and then create an account. It's as simple as that. Just create an account on the IRCC platform. It takes a bit of time because there's a lot of security measures put in place to prevent people from hijacking other people's accounts and all that. So it's something you need to take your time and do. You create an account, and then yeah, you go ahead to start your application. In the application, there's the information they ask from you is very common. It's not rocket science, like they ask you for a passport picture, basic stuff like that. But then two key uh, two key documents they ask you for that I wanted to touch on are the proof of funds and then I think client information, right? So for the proof of funds, I know a lot of people have their own way of getting a bank statement and all that. As much as possible, if you can avoid using a forged bank statement, please do. Because you don't know how these connection guys come up with the bank statements and all that. And in fact, as of the latter part of last year, there were a lot of people who got banned from applying to Canada because of forged bank statements.
Okay.
So if you can avoid using it, please do. Please don't use any forged bank statement. So yeah, uh, another tip I wanted to give about these documents is that as much as possible, try to do a very concise and meaningful application. There are a lot of documents that they ask from you. For example, they ask you for proof of funds, right? And you want to add certain things to the proof of funds to kind of assure us that you have enough funds to come into Canada. Please don't use any unnecessary, sorry to say, unnecessary documents. Don't attach any unnecessary.
What would you consider unnecessary document? Because somebody might use pay slips if they have some kind of loan that they are getting deducted for and they have signed something, they may attach it. They may attach employment contracts stating their earnings and stuff, and then also their bank statement for a given period of time. Which
Yes.
of these would you consider unnecessary document, and which of them would you consider necessary
So
document?
all of these could be necessary depending on how you structure the documentation, right? I know people who probably would add some property or some cars or something to this proof of funds. I would advise against it, right?
Okay.
Because the thing too is you need to know that for each slot that you are allocated to upload a document, you can only upload as much of the document has to be about 2 megabytes or 4 megabytes. I'm not sure anymore, but the size of the document has to be like 2 or 4 megabytes. So there's only so much that you can upload there anyway. But then even if you were to upload anything else apart from your bank statement, make sure that it's something that would answer the question, would this tell us that you have enough money to come into Canada? So you put your bank statements in there. If you have some pay slips and all that you want to put in, you put your employment letter and then your pay slips and all those things in there. But then as much as possible, please make sure that your documents are properly arranged. I know a lot of people who do the arrangement and nobody can even make out which part, like if it's from page 1 to page 20, that is the bank statement, or if it's from page, like people will just insert other
I
pages
get it.
into the
Yeah.
bank statement because the bank statement has to be at least like for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. So it's a lot of pages. And somebody will put some page from his pay slip into the bank statement and just have the whole thing messed up.
Messed
Right?
up.
So it makes it very difficult for anybody to properly review your documents. It has to be in an orderly manner.
Okay.
I recommend that if you want to add anything else apart from your bank statement to this proof of funds, you can have a very small kind of document prepared that would also go ahead to explain to the reviewer that this is the way you structure your documents. From page 1 to page 20 is your bank statement.
Like table of content, be like that.
Table of content, exactly. So that if anybody is reviewing your documents, he knows that, okay, the first 20 pages are bank statements. The second part is this. And then the third part is that. It makes your document very clean and easy for anybody to review. Another thing I wanted to talk about. So I know a lot of people have a lot of problems with the statement of purpose, writing a good statement of purpose and all that. But then, interestingly, do you know that even in the documents that the IRCC
It's
asks
a
to upload, there's no specific slot for even a statement of purpose, right? So, additional document. But then it's very crucial because this document is a document that brings all the small pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about family ties. You're talking about how much money you have to fund yourself. You're talking about why you want to study in Canada and not any other country. You're talking about your program, why you're choosing this specific program, and all that. And this is the only part that you actually get the opportunity.
You tell about yourself. No interview.
So no interview. So it's a very crucial document, and you need to spend a lot of time writing this document. Like Dr. Grace already mentioned, it would be good if you can do that and then give it to anybody to read the document. And you can just, it doesn't even have to be an expert. It could be somebody you think can, like, is reasonable. You read it,
Level-headed person who
and you
can.
ask them, does it make sense? Like, do you think this makes sense, or would it make sense to anybody? So you do all that, and you add. This is where you can add any additional documents that that maybe would have been called unnecessary when you did the proof of finance and all that, right? So when I spoke about your cars and your those property and stuff like that, this is where you would want to put those documents, because in this letter I advise that you have a paragraph that would touch on the fact that you have home ties and you are planning on coming back to Ghana after your studies.
Even if you are not planning, but that's just by the way.
Yeah.
Now, quickly, before I forget, you were in Czech Republic and applying from here with your wife. How were you proving home ties in Ghana?
So I proved home ties with okay, I wouldn't say I. In general, you could prove home ties with your businesses, like Dr. Grace also did. If you have a business in Ghana registered in your name, it's a tie. It's a tie you have in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
You have some property, some lands,
Properties. Mm-hmm.
land, some buildings. It's all ties you have in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
If you have family, like a baby or something like that in Ghana, they are all ties, right?
Mm-hmm.
In our case, we didn't have any baby or anything like that in Ghana, but even our parents, our siblings in Ghana,
Family.
they're all ties. So these are things that you could also like add as part of your application to prove that, yeah, you have enough ties in Ghana and that you'd be willing to come back. And yeah, some people also have jobs that might give them some steady leave or something.
Steady leave, yeah.
You could add all of that to the application to prove that, yes, indeed, there's something else in Ghana that would make you, in the end, want to go back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so approximately the duration and stuff, and I think I caught you in the middle. So if you have anything to add with the visa application, you can complete that for us.
Yeah,
I think we should be rounding up in the next 8 to 10
yes,
minutes.
yes. Yeah, let's please try to do that. Yeah, so again,
You want to go and work?
yeah, please. So again, this client information part is where you put all this information. Even if you have some pictures that you think will put your message across, right? You can feel free to add pictures. But then again, I recommend that, like I said, for the financial information, you can add like a small table of content document, briefly telling us which document is for what. That is what I. And for me, before I submitted my documents and everything, I made a couple of friends take a look at it for me, and everybody agreed that it was clear, concise, and easy for anybody to understand. And that is the point. So I realized that for me specifically, when I did my application, under a month, I had response from the IRCC to submit my passport for the visa.
Wow.
And it was, I think, 17 or 18 days. Another thing I want to say is, in my case, I applied together with my wife, right? And okay, no, let me not go there first. Another thing is that there are a lot of people who might have tried Canada before and may have been refused the visa a first or a second time. You
And
don't,
or like you third time.
yes, in my case, third time. You don't have to lie or like hide that information from anybody because again, the RSCC would already know that. And it's being denied the visa a first or second time doesn't necessarily make you a bad person for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason you were denied, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you are doing the application the next time, you need to include a letter of explanation. Let me call it that. So this letter will basically be addressed to the visa application officer or whatever. And then you briefly explain what you wanted to do when you applied the first, second, and third time and you were refused.
What you have
The
done.
key points that the key reasons that they gave you as reasons for the denial. So basically, pick those points. Usually, there are not a lot. You pick those points and then you counter the points. They said you don't have enough funds to come into Canada. That was their first reason. And then you explain yourself. So you can explain by saying, even though they said that you had enough money in your account, you had this, you had that, you had that. So more or less, you are kind of countering their point and explaining to this new visa application officer that even though they said that it wasn't the case, right? So for all the specific points that they would have listed for the first denial, you need to clearly explain those points and make it clear to this new visa application officer that you've been denied before. These were the reasons, but then the reasons do not either hold or the reasons or
No way.
your circumstances have now
Shame.
changed. Well, maybe at first you didn't have money, but then now you have more than enough. So you need to know how to respond to this particular letter. And yeah, let's be reasonable people. If I were a visa application officer and you were this open and this transparent with me, right? I would.
Mhm.
It gives you a better chance than somebody who wants to hide the fact that he might have applied and been denied the first time. Yeah. And like I was saying, in my case, I applied together with my wife, right? So it wasn't any different. So in a case, there was like additional documents required for her to provide basic stuff, her
Mhm.
passport, this and that, and all that, and then proof of relationship. So in our case, it was marriage, and so you'd add a marriage certificate and all those things. In our case, we intentionally added enough proof to show that we had been traveling around together. We showed pictures of like old pictures from 5 years ago or so, and then new pictures of today. Basically, anything that will show that indeed you guys are really together
Yeah.
and you've been together. If you have like some documents to show that you live together or something, feel free to add all those documents to strengthen your case. And she didn't have to provide any bank statement. I think somebody was asking that question. She didn't have to provide any bank statement because she is more like dependent
Independent.
on me. So I had to provide a bank statement to prove that I have enough money for the both of us. But she didn't have to provide anything. Hers was just basic documents and then proof of relationship with me. Yeah, basically that's it.
Wow, that's so insightful, and thank you so much for sharing. Now, any final words to our audience as we wind up for today's session, and if it becomes necessary that we need to come back again based on the inquiries from our audience, we will schedule another time. But
Okay.
yeah, otherwise, your final words.
Okay. So final words. I've never done this before, and I'm happy. I'm happy I did it. It was very insightful for me too. But finally, I just want to basically summarize everything we said, right? So the whole Canadian process could be very crazy and confusing if you are just about starting to do the whole process. But
Mm-hmm.
then I can assure you that it's not as complicated as it might look from the outside. When you get into it and you want to apply, it's pretty clear and straightforward in terms of applying for a school, in terms of applying for a visa, in terms of moving into the country and all that. And it helps also that there are a lot of people who have already gone ahead to do this even before you. So please, even though it's hard, feel free to reach out to anybody you know who has been through the process, who can be of help to you. If you write any document and you feel like you want somebody to review for you, go ahead. Feel free to ask for help. That is something Ghanaians don't know how to do. Feel free to ask for help. Pray hard about the application, because, to be honest, the application is it's sometimes you can do everything right and yet you don't know what will happen. So it helps to pray a lot about it. And yeah, I just pray that whoever is looking to travel into Canada would actually get a chance to travel into Canada, be it with their family or their kids and wife or whatever. I pray that works out for you just as it has for me. Because Canada is a very lovely place. It's good for growth, it's good for family, it has amazing healthcare. Everything is here. So yeah, it's an amazing place to live and grow. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So, last question: if someone is seeking for opportunity to, or is trying to apply, but they need help and they reach out to you, are you willing to provide some guide or something of the sort?
To be
It's
honest,
okay. It's okay. They should reach out to me. I will reach out to you.
thank you. But to be honest, if you reach out to me and your questions are clear, like I don't mind. I will just quickly respond. But then there are some people who reach out to you and
I know,
they
bro.
now want to think
You
about.
have to find the questions from what they are trying to write you. I know.
Yes, but then if you have a clear question, I would respond in a matter of minutes. So yeah, that's another thing. If you know how to ask your questions, I'm ready to support. Otherwise, yeah, either ways you can feel free to me. You can chat. We can just talk about options and
Oh, yeah, there was a question here because I don't know if when I said that Theophilus was not online, and Theophilus has been a consistent participant of our live session, and I don't want to miss his question. He's asking, is it a must that you secure your scholarship with your partner? And as I was telling you guys, it looks like you are making it like a family business that you can single people might. So please clarify this. I think Tio missed it, but you can clarify now.
So uh, scholarship and spouse, like
But basically, it's also about the admission. Yeah, like if you want to move, and it's about, like a must that you should do it with your spouse, right?
yeah. So I mean, the school application in itself and the scholarship and the funding and everything,
It's
your
only
wife
you.
or your spouse doesn't come in at all, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
only you. It's only the visa application part that you would want to, because you want
Introduce.
your wife and your kids and all that. That's where you introduce your wife and your kids. Otherwise, they don't come in at all.
Okay. Yeah, and as I said, if that was the case, then how about single people? So it shouldn't be that a must that you should secure it with your wife. If you go back to the the whole discussion, you would also realize they gave several advantages why it would be nice to go with your spouse, especially if you don't get scholarship and you need to fund yourself, so that your spouse can work unlimited hours to support you as much as possible. So that was basically it. And thank you, Kwame Tavia, for the nice comment. We thank you all for your time, for your
Allow me to just add this small piece of information.
okay,
So I know that people think because it's hard for even a single person to come into Canada, it would be extra hard for you to even come with a wife and family.
or a spouse.
But then I want to dispute that.
A
Like,
wife can also bring their husband because by you always making it like the husband would bring.
yes, exactly. And also, right,
Mhm.
you know, sometimes I feel like if you have a spouse and
It's
some
an
family that you
advantage.
want to bring to Canada, it's even an added bonus. Sometimes it could be an advantage. So don't think because maybe you applied a loan and it didn't happen for you, then you don't even want, no, because I have some friends and colleagues here who now realize that a lot of us who are in the master's program came with our families. And now he realizes that he should have added a wife to the application when he did it. And it would have been easier for him. But then he missed out on that chance. Of course, now he can still do that, but then it's just a long process and all that. So if you have a spouse or family in Ghana that you want to travel with, please do add them in the application. Of course, it means that you need to prove higher funds
Income.
and all that. And sometimes it's an added bonus. Don't.
And I feel like in a case where you are going to be self-funded, right? Of course, if I'm the visa officer, I'm looking at if the spouse is coming, the spouse is going to work. So the sustainability or the possibility of you being able to fund yourself and finish the school successfully is higher than person who might be limited by time as to how much they can make to support themselves and stuff. So yeah, if you have the opportunity, use it. After all, you have to try it. If you get all the documents right, I think if they didn't want you to go with spouse, they wouldn't even provide that option in the first place. So let's use it. And now again, thank you for your audience for taking time to participate in all this important program. I hope that you would make good use of this information, and the time spent by our guests to lecture or educate us will not be in vain. Next week, 6 p.m. GMT, we would have a session with our US colleagues about how to sail through your studentship and PhD admission interview. In US, they do offer the admission on based on interviews and stuff. And we have already covered the funding application to US. We have already covered the visa aspect of the US application. And then we are going to continue with the interview aspect. So if you are interested in knowing more about how to go through successfully with your interview at the US for admissions, please join us next week for important update. Thank you all, and hopefully your dreams of studying abroad would come to reality with time. And stay tuned. Bye.